joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. 2 soldiers are injured during a clash with gunmen in Tripoli as the army deploys in the northern city. UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi arrives in Damascus for talks with Syrian government officials. And Spain summons the U.S. ambassador in Madrid over spying allegations on behalf of the United States. 2 soldiers have been injured during a clash with gunmen in Tripoli as they deployed in their neighborhood as part of a security plan in the capital of the north. One of the soldiers was badly wounded after gunmen from the district of Bab el-Tabani opened fire on them. The army responded to the sources of fire as the soldiers deployed heavily in the area. Their deployment with armored vehicles came as they previously enhanced their presence in the neighborhood of Jabal Muhsin. 1 week of clashes between the rival districts have left scores of casualties. Special Tribunal for Lebanon pretrial judge Daniel Franson has completed the transfer of the entire file in the case of the 2005 assassination of former Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri to the trial chamber. The STL says the case file contains the evidence and all other documents that relate to the case. The trial chamber will now continue to prepare for the start of the trial, which is scheduled tentatively for January 13th of 2014. The indictment against the 4 Hezbollah members, Salim Jamil Ayyash, Mustafa Amin Badruddin, Hussein Hassan Onaisi and Asad Hassan Sabra, was confirmed in June of 2011. A 5th Hezbollah supporter, Hassan Habib Mir'i, was revealed by the STL in October. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday by the trial chamber judges to discuss matters related to the preparation of the trial. A Lebanese and a Turkish man who are in custody and 12 others have been charged with forming a network to carry out terrorist activities, including car bombings. The National News Agency says State Commissioner to the Military Court, Judge Sa'id, issued the charges against them for preparing booby-trapped cars and parking them in different residential areas for the purpose of blowing them up. LBCI identified the suspects as Mohammed al-Atrash, a Lebanese and Turkish national, Mohammed Erdemir. A booby-trapped car was found this month in Al Ma'mura district of Beirut's southern suburbs, containing around 50 kilograms of explosives. The National News Agency says the 14-member network was planning to blow up the car before it was found, and the explosives were defused. State Commissioner to the Military Court, Judge Sa'id, has called for an investigation into the death of a Rumia prison inmate who had been found hanged. The National News Agency says that Sa'id tasked his assistant Kamal Nassar with heading to the prison to investigate the case. The source says prisoner Noor al-Arab was found hanged in one of the prison's bathrooms in Block B. Nassar will try to determine if al-Arab was killed or had committed suicide. The inmate was serving a sentence for fraud. Rumia, the oldest and largest of Lebanon's overcrowded prisons, has witnessed sporadic prison breaks and escalating riots in recent years as inmates living in poor conditions demand better treatment. UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi has arrived in Damascus for talks with Syrian government officials amid reports of fierce fighting in and around the capital city. In his visit, he is expected to meet Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim. Brahimi has been trying to build support for peace talks planned in Geneva next month between the government and the opposition. The so-called Geneva II peace talks, backed by Russia and the United States and is due to take place on November the 23rd, have been repeatedly postponed amid wrangling among the Syrian opposition and a dispute over which countries, including Iran, should participate. Making the task harder for Brahimi has been the refusal of 19 powerful rebel groups in Syria to take part in the conference, saying that negotiating with the Assad government would be an act of betrayal. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov describes as outrageous a threat by powerful rebel groups in Syria against those who attend peace talks on the conflict backed by Moscow and Washington. 19 Islamist groups fighting to topple President Bashar al-Assad issued a statement on Sunday saying the proposed conference is not or will it never be the people's choice or the revolution's demand. They went on to say that anyone who attends such talks will be committed treason. Lavrov said the Islamist commander's threats implied that Russian diplomatic representative offices and diplomats working in foreign countries will be legitimate targets of assassination and other attacks. Coming up next, the trial of Rebecca Brooks and Andy Coulson begins in London, promising to be one of the longest criminal trials. Stay tuned for the story. Welcome back. Israel's Air Force bombed what a military spokesman described as 2 rocket launching tubes in Gaza, hours after Palestinians in the Gaza Strip fired 2 rockets at Israel. Palestinian sources say the airstrike caused no casualty. Palestinians in the Gaza Strip fired 2 rockets at a southern Israeli port city, but Israel's Iron Dome interceptor reportedly shot down one, while the other fell into the sea. The pre-dawn Palestinian salvo on Ashkelon, about 12 kilometers north of Gaza, was unusual given the relative restraint of Palestinian militants since last November's war between the coastal enclave's Islamist Hamas rulers and Israel. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for today's launches. Moving on to Turkey, police fired water cannon and tear gas to disperse around 2,000 people protesting at a court's refusal to detain a police officer. The officer, identified as Ahmed S., is on trial accused of killing a demonstrator during the popular unrest in June. The Ankara court has rejected a demand by the victim's lawyers that the defendant be detained and ruled instead that he could take part in hearings via video conference for security reasons. The angry crowd outside the court shouted anti-government slogans in protest at the ruling, prompting the police intervention. The hearing was adjourned to December 2nd. Residents of the oil-rich Abyei region claimed by both Sudan and South Sudan have continued to cast their ballots in an unofficial referendum to decide which country they belong to. The voting began on Sunday, with neither Sudan nor South Sudan endorsing it, and only one of 2 tribes that inhabit the disputed district, the Ngok Dinka, took part. The Arab Misseria, who have close ties with Sudan, boycotted, saying they will not recognize the result expected on October 31st. Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir pledges to work with his South Sudanese counterpart to settle the future of the contested Abyei region. The U.S. ambassador in Madrid was summoned to the Spanish Foreign Ministry to provide details over allegations the United States spied on Spain. A Spanish newspaper says the U.S. National Security Agency recently tracked over 60 million calls in Spain in the space of just a month, citing a document which it said formed part of papers obtained from ex-NSA contractor Edward Snowden. Spain's government has so far said it was not aware its citizens had been spied on by the NSA, which has been accused of accessing tens of thousands of French phone records and monitoring the phone of German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Spain resisted calls from Germany for the European Union's 28 member states to reach a no-spy deal, similar to an agreement Berlin and Paris are seeking, though Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy said the country was looking for more information. And now for news around the world in brief. The worst storm in several years has battered the United Kingdom, bringing heavy rain, hurricane-force gusts of wind, and widespread transport disruption. The storm brought gusts of wind as high as 160 kilometers per hour on the Isle of Wight, on the south coast of England. Over 100,000 people are believed to have lost power. Minor damage was also caused in France, and cross-channel ferry services were disrupted. Argentina's ailing president has suffered a blow in midterm elections, losing her majority in Congress and ending chances of a constitutional change to allow her 3rd term. Voters chose half of the lower house of Congress and a third to the Senate. With 72% of ballot boxes counted, the government said the opposition was ahead throughout the country. Christie says the world's biggest orange diamond, currently displayed in Hong Kong, is said to fetch $20 million at its auction in Geneva next month. The exceedingly rare pear-shaped stone is worth 14.82 carats. It was mined in South Africa around 30 years ago and cut from a crystal of over 32 carats, according to Christie's senior international jewelry specialist David Warren. Rupert Murdoch's former British newspaper chief Rebecca Brooks and Prime Minister David Cameron's ex-media head Andy Coulson arrive in court as they face charges relating to phone hacking and illegal payments to public officials. Their trial has begun with jury selection at London's Central Criminal Court, known as the Old Bailey. Brooks and Coulson are accused of conspiring to illegally access voicemail messages on mobile phones belonging to politicians, the rich and famous, as well as victims of crime and ordinary people, to secure exclusives. Although they deny all charges, detectives launched an investigation in January of 2011, and since then more than 125 people have been arrested and more than 40 were charged with the offenses. The high-profile case is expected to last around 4 months. Comedian Ellen DeGeneres is always trying to help. She came up with some great Halloween costumes for her kids this season with her very own Ellen touch. Check it out. يمنى. اترك شوي. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now, let me remind you of our headlines. 2 soldiers are injured during a clash with gunmen in Tripoli as the army deploys in the northern city. UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi arrives in Damascus for talks with Syrian government officials. Finally, Spain summons the U.S. ambassador in Madrid over spying allegations on behalf of the United States. Those were your Monday headlines from Future Television, live from Beirut. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.